everyone. I am Amita from Nutritional, a platform for natural and holistic therapies. We are going to be talking about diet to support thyroid hormones in women. Well, that is the topic of our discussion today, and joining me is Lauren, dietitian and nutritionist who focuses on women's health. I'm just waiting for her to join me, and you can ask all the questions if you would like. Well, there you go. Hi. Hello, Lauren. How are you?
Hi. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. Well, great to see you. Great to meet you.
Likewise. Great to meet you.
So I was just telling our viewers the topic is on thyroid hormones in women and how nutrition can help. So before we get started, maybe you could tell us a little bit about yourself, and then we can go into the questions after that. So
Sure.
Yeah, so this is Lauren. Please go ahead.
Awesome. Yeah, my name is Lauren Papanos. I am a registered dietitian nutritionist. I hold both my bachelor's and master's degrees in nutrition sciences, and I own Functional Feeling Nutrition, which is a integrative nutrition practice here in Los Angeles, California. So I have worked primarily with women. I specialize mainly in metabolic health, whether it's polycystic ovarian syndrome. I do a lot with thyroid conditions, a lot of hypothyroidism, women's hormones and amenorrhea and fertility type issues, and also exercise performance. I have some years of experience working in more of a sports nutrition type setting as well. So a little bit of some, hormone and metabolism at the center to all of that, but super excited to be here today. So thank you for having me.
That's great. So let's talk about metabolic health and women's hormones and thyroid. How does the nutrition can help support it? So I think all
Sure.
of us, yeah.
Well, I think that there's a lot of different components to look at, right? But really, it's looking at it from a holistic standpoint of it's not just diet, right? There's always going to be environmental components to it, lifestyle components to address. And then diet is one very large component that really helps improve, symptoms and helps improve someone's health outcomes. But all of that has to be addressed, right? So I like to always start with talking to my patients about how everything begins with the brain, right? And our brain, our hypothalamus, which is located in our brain, is really what governs how our thyroid functions, how our reproductive hormones are made, how insulin, which is a key regulator to our metabolic health, is controlled. So if we can really control and we can work with how do we support the hypothalamus and how do we support our cortisol and our stress hormones, I think that really is the place to start. And then you work outward with dietary strategies from there.
So managing our brain is number one, and that affects everything like a thyroid and other hormones, right?
Yep.
So stress would be the number one thing, like what you're saying.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and a lot of people are very surprised that that what you eat or how you eat can very much impact your cortisol levels, but also that your cortisol plays a huge role in your reproductive hormone health, as well as your insulin and your blood sugar, which also go into effect in terms of your hormones, but also with thyroid conditions. A lot of times thyroid conditions develop because of a very stressful life situation. So that's why I'm so interested in the role, I guess, of cortisol on all of these other hormonal processes.
So I think that's a very interesting concept, and I don't think many people know about the connection between the brain and the cortisol and the thyroid. So so we all know about the connection between the gut and the brain, right? That gut and brain axis. So when you're talking about the brain, automatically the question comes to your gut. So your brain and gut is all connected, and then if they are out of balance, and then the thyroid hormone kind of goes out of whack, right? So this whole thing kind of happens in that. I mean, which way? That's what I'm just guessing. I'm not a dietitian again.
Yeah, no, absolutely. So I always explain it as there's this cup, right? And we have a cup of water. Think of it like that. And there's all of these different stressors that can fill up the cup. And all of the different stressors are liquid that are going to go into the cup. And so those stressors can be deficiencies. So someone not having enough micronutrients, enough vitamins and minerals. There could be some type of gut infection at play. Did I lose you? Can you hear me okay?
Okay. Hi, Lauren. Can you see
Hi,
me?
can you hear me? Yes, I
Yeah,
can see
yeah.
you.
In between your network connection went a little. I don't know what happened.
No
Something
problem.
happened. Yeah. Okay. So yes, please go ahead.
Yes, so there's different stressors that can fill up this
Yeah.
cup. And so
Yeah.
those stressors can come from nutritional deficiencies, not enough vitamins and minerals, which
Yeah.
I've seen so many vitamin and mineral reports, and it's almost impossible for even if someone's eating the healthiest diet to get enough from just diet alone because of, stress depleting a lot of the vitamins and minerals in our diet, exercise, which a lot of people sometimes are, doing too much exercise and that's depleting these vitamins and minerals, even just our soil, right? And then these environmental things that can also change our vitamin and mineral intake. So that is a huge component to it. But really, the biggest thing that goes into that from a nutritional element is how much you're eating. And so for a lot of the patients and clients that I'm working with, a lot of them are pretty active people. And so they are expending a pretty good amount of energy throughout the day and also eating very healthy. And so what can happen is there can become this really imbalance between how much energy you're expending through exercise, through daily activities, through all of the stress that these people are under with their jobs and life stressors, and then how much they're actually consuming in terms of the total amount of just energy from calories and also these vitamins and minerals.
Got it. Got it. So, but so you talked about the cortisol. What are the other hormones that can go out of balance, when we're talking about hormone health?
Sure, yeah. So cortisol is going to play a huge role in our
Yeah.
insulin management and our blood sugar management. So if you're, sleep deprived, if you're going through a stressful season, you will see that your blood sugar and your insulin levels will become elevated. So cortisol does impact that component. Cortisol also it competes with our gonadotropin releasing hormone, which is what regulates all of our reproductive hormones. And especially for women in particular, it has huge implications on our progesterone production. So, for a lot of women that maybe have irregular menstrual cycles, a lot of it can be related back to the amount of cortisol that's being produced because that cortisol is going to compete with that progesterone for binding.
So cortisol is, in your opinion, the main hormone that affects the thyroid, right? From that point of view.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
So how do we? So now there are hunger hormones too, right?
Yep.
That kind of. How do we handle those along with what other things are going on?
I think that's where the gut really plays a role in all of this, right? Because if we have good gut health, then that's going to really help support that it needs, that there's not any type of pathogens in there, and that we're getting rid of those if those are present, because very many people are struggling with some type of gut disturbance. And so it's not unusual for someone to have something going on. So the gut plays a critical role in that. Vitamin D, getting enough vitamin D through sun exposure, through our diet, it's very uncommon for someone to be able to eat enough vitamin D or to be able to get enough vitamin D from just the sun alone. So for most people, that does require some element of supplementation to ensure that they have enough vitamin D. And vitamin D is really important for our serotonin level production.
Yeah. But vitamin D, most of the time, we can't get a lot from the food, right? So we have to take supplementation most of the time.
Yeah, there's very few food sources that contain vitamin D, and you have to eat quite a bit to be able to keep your levels high. So I would say it's pretty unusual that someone is able to keep their levels high with just food alone.
So you recommend supplementation of vitamin D for most of the women or even men for that matter, right?
Sure. Yep. Yeah, it's very important for hormone production.
Okay. So now, how do we, so hunger hormones, we talked about that a little bit, and those are related to the gut, right? Obviously, the gut hormones. And then, but how do we, now the gut and the brain, how do we rewire our brains? Because that's what you said at the beginning, that everything starts in the brain, right? The stress and the cortisol. So how do we rewire our brain to make sure that, we don't come into this thyroid and other hormonal imbalance?
Yeah. Yeah, that's the hardest part, right? And I think that's
Yeah.
where a lot of the intuitive component of teaching people how to understand their body comes into this. I think that it's important to know that our body doesn't differentiate between stressors. So our body doesn't know if there's a stressor coming from something happening within our personal life, if it's a stressor because we're not sleeping enough, if it's a stressor because we're not eating enough or we're over exercising. Our body just knows that it's under too much stress and that it's going to start sending those signals to the thyroid and to our ovaries or our testes to slow down its production of hormones. And so managing those stressors and knowing that if I'm going through a stressful season, I need to pull out a stressor from that cup. I need to focus on really ensuring that my diet is ample in calories that I need to support my energy levels, to provide my body with enough vitamins and minerals, right? So that's where the intuitive component of knowing your body and knowing what you're dealing with really is helpful.
So, but what type of foods should we focus on to make sure our brain stays less stressful, right?
Yep.
And then, of course, mindfulness. We all know that meditation helps, but and most of us have a problem in meditating. You know, sitting still for like 10 minutes or 5 minutes and listening to something. Meditation is a bit hard. But how can nutrition? What kind of different foods do you think we should focus on?
Yeah, that's a great question. So, our cortisol and the health of our mitochondria are really important. So I always like to really target enough antioxidants in the diet because we know that antioxidants can significantly lower our cortisol levels and can improve the health of our mitochondria, which is where a lot of our hormone production happens, right? So think of things like your citrus fruits and vegetables, your strawberries, your dark leafy greens, your bell peppers, these really rich foods and antioxidants and vitamin C. Those in large enough quantities can have profound impacts on our cortisol production.
So load up on antioxidants, basically.
Load up on antioxidants, yep. And then the second one is amino acids. So for a lot of people, they're not quite eating enough protein. And protein is where we get these amino acids. And those amino acids are really important for being able to help lower our cortisol production. But those amino acids, especially when they're paired with a little bit of some complex carbohydrate, think of your sweet potatoes, your black beans, your lentils of any sort, right? Those are actually going to help in the evening time with pushing that tryptophan to melatonin. And that's going to help with getting to sleep and then producing the right levels of cortisol. So that pairing of those amino acids with those complex carbohydrates can be very valuable.
So a lot of people talk about at night drinking some milk, right? I mean, not necessarily cow milk, but like oat milk or something that helps the melatonin and then helps to sleep and helps to kind of calm down. I mean, what are your thoughts on that? Is there some certain type of foods that we should eat at night so that we are kind of de-stressed at night and get a better night's sleep?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think that the most important part is looking at when are you going to bed and then subtracting 3 hours from that. So, if you're going to start your bedtime routine, I usually start mine at 8:45, 9 p.m. So I'm going to try to have my last large meal by, 6:45 or 7 p.m. so that whatever you eat has enough time to digest. And because just having food in your stomach, that can really heat up your core body temperature, especially if there is a lot of protein in it. And it can cause just that feeling of bulk in your stomach that can make it hard to sleep. So I think that's the first component, is looking at the timeline, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
The second thing would be making sure that that last meal that you do have does have those complex carbohydrates paired with those amino acids. So for a lot of people I see that especially are trying to lose weight, or maybe they, read articles online, whatever it might be, a lot of people, they restrict carbohydrate intake in the evening time for fear that it might cause weight gain or whatever issues there might be, right? And I actually usually try to get people to do the opposite, where it's not a lot of carbohydrate, but you're getting in some of those really good fiber-rich carbohydrates, those beans, the legumes, the sweet potatoes. You're having a small portion of that paired with a 3 to 4 ounce portion of fish or whatever your protein source is. And that way you're pairing that carbohydrate with the amino acids so that you can really help support those cortisol levels.
So, but you're absolutely right. I mean, most of us, we just are cutting down on our carb, and that's what the internet says. We go on Google and we check it and say, cut down on your carbs so you lose weight, but that's not the right thing to do, right? And that's what you're saying, that you have to include the complex carbohydrates with amino acids, right?
Yeah. Yes, I think they're very important, and its dose is the most important, right? So I'm not saying that, your whole plate should be full of these complex carbohydrates, but, a palm-sized portion of some sweet potatoes or some beans, that's perfect to be able to give you a little bit of those complex carbohydrates there. And I personally think that the best time to have those carbohydrates is either at that dinner meal or after any form of exercise, because that's, the exercise is really going to help you improve that insulin sensitivity, and the insulin is a critical component to your hormone health.
So after exercise, like an evening walk or evening exercise, and then after that you have a complex carbohydrate, just a teeny bit, and then pair it with some other, like proteins and a little bit of fat as well. Fat also. Yeah,
always a little bit of fat at each meal.
Yeah, so like avocado or something, or
or if you're doing something like salmon naturally contains some really good omega-3 fats in there. So if you're doing salmon, you probably don't need to really add in any other than maybe some oil that you're cooking it with. But yeah, if it's something like some black beans don't have any fat, so I would recommend adding in some avocado or adding in some nuts or seeds to be able to get those good heart healthy fats.
Got it. Okay, well, I think that's great. To summarize, Lauren's talking about managing your cortisol levels, the stress hormone, the most, because stress hormone is the one that's the culprit of all our other imbalance that happens in our thyroid, right? And then how do we do that? And you're suggesting to add complex carbohydrates after the exercise and pair it up with the amino acids to balance it up, and then some fat like avocado or maybe salmon or these kind of foods. And what else would you like to add? I'm just kind of trying to summarizing because I see people joining right now.
Yes. Yeah, I think as we spoke, the antioxidants are really important there as well. So ensuring that you're getting enough antioxidants to be able to support those cortisol levels. But hormone health in general, we really need to eat and these balanced meals that have enough fats in them to really be able to support that healthy blood sugar, and not be grazing all day long. And so I see that a lot too, where people are kind of just like picking at things all day long. They're not really sitting down, forming a meal that is balanced, that's really supporting this blood sugar, and then allowing their body time to go through their full digestive cycle, finish that out before they eat their meal. And so I think really trying to get back into more of a normal eating pattern of how we should eat, of eating 3 times per day and having the fats, the protein, those fibers there, and then allowing our body time to do what it needs to do before we consume food again.
No, I think that makes sense. I think all of us are nibbling all day, like some kind of a snack or some kind of an energy bar. I mean, that's also a lot of people do, right? To pick up an energy bar and get the energy out, and then you've had that energy bar, which is not natural, and then you don't eat a proper meal, right, at night or whatever, and then that's not the right way. The right way is to eat your proper meals, and in between, is snacking allowed, like a little bit of fruit in between or not, or?
I try to get people to focus more on meals than snacks.
Okay.
And sometimes you need both, because sometimes, people do have a really high energy expenditure. And so we do need some snacks built in there. But I really like, even if it's a snack, I want it to look very similar to a meal. If you're doing an apple, pair it with, some hard-boiled eggs, or pair it with some salmon and, some nuts or seeds. And that way you're getting in more of a balanced meal rather than it just being a little, sugar source that's happening throughout the course of the day.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense. Well, thank you so much, Lauren, for being with us.
You're welcome.
I think it's a very informational session, and I hope our viewers, this is a time, when it's evening time, but most of the viewers join in the morning, more viewers join in the morning, but when they watch it, if you have any questions, let us know, and we'll be back with Lauren with some other topics in future. Anything else you'd like to add, Lauren, before we wrap up?
I think that's all. If you have any questions, though, please feel free. You can follow me over on Instagram, ask any questions, or comment on this IG Live, and I'm happy to answer anything.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.